I've been told to use the mic. The voice actor who was just in here was talking about how your voice sounds different in your head to what you hear. For years I thought I sounded like James Earl Jones. And then I heard myself on a recording once. It was actually an answering machine that shows how old I am. And I said, geez, who's that? And they said, Bill, that's you. And I didn't speak for 6 weeks. So I apologize for the voice and the face. I can't do anything about either. But thank you for being here today. My name is Bill Nedbro. I've been fortunate enough to do some writing in a lot of different genres that hopefully you're interested in. And this is Ed Hellman of Devil's Bargain Toys. Hopefully you stop by and see some of the cool things he has on display downstairs with fresh movie fiction, Big Bad Workshop. Okay. If you haven't, check out some of the stuff that he's got there, but he's got some cool pictures to show you here as well. Okay. I'm going to kind of go over a little bit of some of the writing I've done, kind of give a brief overview. After you do your bit.
You can do it between.
Okay. If anybody has any questions at that point, I'll take them. Then we're going to turn things over to Ed. They're going to show some really cool stuff. You're going to wonder through the whole thing, why did these guys decide to team up? So at the end, we're going to tell you that. Hopefully that excites you. And then we're accepting cash donations afterwards. And Larry Hama is the next panel here. So you guys have the best seats if you want to stick around and see him. Cool. All right, great. All right, so click something.
Flashing.
Thank you.
Like so. Okay. Okay. So, for most of my life, I considered myself an author, and I was one of those authors who wrote the greatest story ever, every night. All right? I spend the day getting inspired at the greatest story ever. After dinner, I'd sit down at the computer, bang out 2 pages, think I was brilliant, go to bed, wake up the next morning, read it, and go, oh my God, what was I thinking? Delete it. Right? For years and years and years, that was my life. What ended up changing that was Hasbro signed a licensing agreement with G.I. Joe to do licensed fiction. I wasn't sure how long that window of opportunity was going to be open, but I had a lot of good G.I. Joe stories, at least I thought they were good. And I wanted to exploit that. So for 6 months, every night, I sat in front of the computer and I didn't read. I wrote a page, wrote 3 pages, whatever I did, and went to bed. And the next day, I wrote another 3 pages. I said, I'm going to finish this novel and I'm going to see if it's any good. All right? So I wrote about, I think, 360 single-spaced word pages. And then said, okay, now it's done. I'm going to go back and read it and see if it's any good. And to my surprise, I really liked it. So I put it out there. It was called First Salvo, and I was very happy to see that other people liked it as well. It did really well. I focused mainly on the original 14 members of the team. I set it in about 1982, and I really was trying to provide kind of a really grounded, kind of militaristic look at G.I. Joe. It's a mythos that has kind of a vast array of takes, right? I mean, the comics are very different from the cartoons, and the Energon universe is very different from the Hama universe. But I was looking for kind of a grounded, kind of militaristic take. And I put it out, and it was kind of gritty and realistic, and people took to it. Anybody read it? Okay, a few, cool. So I saw that success, and again, I wasn't sure how big the window of opportunity was going to be, so I put out the next one as soon as I could. My family was gracious enough to let me ignore them for another 6 months, and I picked it up, and I wrote Honor, which was the follow-up. That novel introduced kind of the second generation, Snow Job and Doc and CoverGirl and all those characters. I played with characters like Quinn, Dana from the October Guard was in there. So it was a fun follow-up. It was a much different writing experience because I had a plan for the first one. The second one, I knew where the first story went. I knew what needed to happen next. So I was kind of writing that one in a let's see what happens type way. So kind of different writing experience was a lot of fun. My third book in the G.I. Joe universe kind of picked me up a lot of the claims. It's called Body Count. That's the one that I was working with Hasbro. We were doing a lot of panels at JoeCon, and I pitched an idea of kind of a fan poll, taking some of the more popular novels that were coming out and letting fans vote on a character who might be turned into an action figure. And I was fortunate enough that mine won. It was a character from Body Count called Stiletto. So that was a really cool experience. I got to walk into Toys R Us at some point and look at a shelf and see a character that I had created in official Hasbro packaging with a file card. So it was fun, except I spent a lot of time there after work. There was a Toys R Us right around the corner, and security kept having to ask me to leave. Call some people, hey, look, I did that. They know, get out of here. So the fourth and final novel I got to was called Dishonor of the Father. And again, each novel kind of progressed about a year and introduced the next generation. So I got to about the 86 Joes. So Flint and Lady J and some of those characters there. So it was around that time. I think that had been out about 6 months, maybe a year, when the licensing agreement fell through. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I did 4 full-length novels in the G.I. Joe universe. In between, I got to play with some novellas as well. Did everybody vote? Does everybody remember the kind of the fan service poll thing? Yeah. That was a lot of fun, and I had kind of known the other 3 authors who were in it. It was Justin Bell, Jim Beard, and Troy Osgood. We became really close during that time. And so Jim Beard actually proposed an idea where we would write a novella about each of our characters. He proposed a really interesting thing. He said, let's give each of us a month. He said, I'll do the first one, and I'll start a story. And I'll write about my character, who is Adventure Team Marcus. And so his was set, in the 70s. And he said, I'm going to write it. I'm not going to tell you guys anything about it. I'm going to publish it. You're going to read it. And a month later, you're going to follow up somehow. You're going to tie your story in somehow to my story. And same thing. You're not going to share that with anybody, and then the next guy's going to pick it up, and the next guy's going to pick it up. So it was a really kind of fun experience. We did kind of 4 standalone stories, but they're all kind of unified in a way so you can read them all as one story. And each of us wrote about our character. So that's pretty fun. I think I hit a bit of roadblock at one point, not the character, kind of a writer's block, and needed to step away from the novels for a while. So I did an origin story for Buzzer. He's a character I can relate to a little bit. He's a teacher who turned into a biker. I'm a teacher who knows how to ride a motorcycle. So that was enough. That was enough. I wrote kind of an origin story about him, and I kind of told about the origin of the Dread Knight. And then the last JoeFest did kind of something similar to what I'd done with Jim and Justin and Troy. We did a 3-part series called Contamination Legacy. What we did at that JoeCon was we solicited characters from the audience that people felt like hadn't gotten enough attention. And so we took those ideas and we said, okay, well, let's do a 3-part series and let's incorporate those. And the character I got to play with was Sightline, who's a newer character that had gotten any media exposure. So it was fun to kind of play with him and jump into the future and kind of look at some Joes that don't get any attention at all. So all told, I got to do 4 novels and 3 novellas. So I did a lot of writing in the Joe universe, which was a lot of fun. So the great thing about that is that it led to some attention and led to more things. So I got contacted by somebody from Moonstone Press, and I got to do kind of a novella short story about an old pulp character called Ivy Frost. This book's available through Moonstone Press or on Amazon. It's called Ivy Frost, Tales of Mystery and Scientific Detection. So that was kind of the next publication I did. Has anybody seen this book, The Joy of Joe? Okay. It's a wonderful anthology that Jim Beard put together. collection of essays just about people's experience growing up with G.I. Joe from all eras, from the 12-inch on through. So he asked me to kind of co-edit that and then contribute an essay, which I did. Mine was called G.I. Joe Doesn't Matter. Don't charge the stage. Read it first. Because it talks about how G.I. Joe brings you to the things that really do matter. So if you haven't picked that up, take a look at it. It's on Amazon. And also, the other reason you want to buy it, I mean, is that kid adorable or what?
He's all right.
He's okay? He's not as good looking now, so. So when I was doing the last JoeCon, there was kind of a big celebration at the end. That was Chattanooga? Was that the last one? Yeah, who was there for that last panel? Okay. We exited that and we were driving home, and I was kind of reflecting on people's experiences there. And I thought it'd be great to kind of do a follow-up to the Joy of Joe. I call it the Joy of JoeCon. So I, talked to a lot of people who I'd met through all the work I'd done with the publishing, and people I'd met at JoeCon, and kind of did a second volume called the Joy of JoeCon. And again, I found somebody I think just gorgeous to throw on the cover there up there in the Baroness outfit. She looks great today too, doesn't she? And there's a little autograph section at the end of the book, so I've been walking around all weekend and kind of collecting autographs. Can you pass me? Yeah, I have a copy here if you want to take a look at it after the panel or whatnot, but 5 or 6 of the people who contributed have been here, so I've kind of been filling up my autograph book, and we've given me a chance to reconnect with some of those people and catch up with them. When I said that the G.I. Joe doesn't matter, kind of the point of that essay was that the friendships that we make as a result of pursuing this is what really matters, right? And I've heard that time and time again this weekend, is that, I found this, for my collection, but I also got to see this person who I hadn't seen in 2 years. So hopefully you guys have made some friends this weekend, and I know I have. All 3 of you got together through this. Yeah, that's what you're going to remember years from now, right? So. I pitched this to MJ at Marauder Task Force, a novel that's the promise of some things that he's still working on. I'm sure many of you are friends of what they're doing, and that they're working through their kind of Vietnam Kickstarter now, but he's got plans and plans and plans and plans, and one of those was Wrath. So I was able to kind of do a novel for him. It premiered here at JoeFest at 2019. We had, I think, 30 hardcovers and then a number of paperbacks. A few are still available on the website. Listen, MJ funded some of that, and he's one of the greatest guys in the industry. The fact that there's still a couple copies there means that he hasn't gotten his return on investment yet. So if you haven't picked this up, don't do it for me, because I've already been paid. Do it for him, because he's a wonderful guy. And if you enjoyed any of the kind of military stuff that I've done, I think you'll enjoy it. Another thing I got to do was a number of comic books for Valorverse. Out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he's done 8 issues. I got to do 7 of those. So that was a lot of fun. Part of the struggle for me as a writer is that I see the scene in my head. I know where everybody's standing. I know what the carpet looks like. I know if it's a fight. I see how it's choreographed. The struggle for me is to kind of convey that to you. Like, what are the words that are going to get that into your head? So working in the comic industry has been great, because I don't have to narratively do that. I have an artist who, and as long as I can convey to him what I'm seeing, he or she's the one that can kind of really kind of sell that for me. So that's a great experience for me. I was just saying before the thing that I grew up on Larry Hama's comics, and I've been a comic fan ever since. So it was a lifelong goal for me to kind of fulfill that and be able to get these issues out. I was sitting in the hall of my dorm as a freshman, and I was talking to a really gorgeous girl who said, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to be a comic book writer. And she kind of rolled her eyes and turned away. But it worked, and yeah, I married her. It worked. So it was great to kind of fulfill that. And then I emailed him one day, or I called him, and I said, listen, these are great, but there's more story to be told, right? So I kind of into letting me do a novel as well. That's available on Amazon. It's called Broken Alliances. So if you're a fan of those action figures, or again, even if you're not, and you're just a fan of kind of militaristic fantasy, then it might be another good book for you to pick up and read on the plane next time you come to one of these conventions. A couple other projects I've been working on lately are kind of, I don't know. I got hired to write a story called The Night Santa Claus Failed. Every Christmas, I kind of check in and say, hey, it'd be really cool to give that as a gift. Is that ever going to come out? And I hear radio silence. So I might just take it and do something with it on my own at this point. There's a couple other projects I got attached to it, and some other comics for a toy company. Bless you. And got paid for the first few issues and then got ghosted. There's another project that I'm working on right now that I can't talk about, but I've got some other things coming up, hopefully, or at least I got paid for that disappeared into the wilderness. But I've tried to stay busy. I've mentioned Jim Beard a number of times. Comic fans other than Larry Hama in the room? Okay. He's been working on another anthology called Jack of All Comics about Jack Kirby. And that might be out this morning. He said that that's seconds away from publication. So keep your eye out for that. I contributed an essay about Thor. Which not necessarily my favorite character, but I got to do a lot of cool research and read some cool Kirby stuff, so that was a lot of fun. So that's kind of an overview of my career. Oh, I'm jumping ahead. A couple people over here read First Salvo, other people haven't. Okay. If you want to, you can't. I'm sorry, it's out of print. When the licensing agreement expired, I was told, you own the story, but you don't own the characters, right? You can republish the story, you just can't use rock and roll. So for years and years, I thought, well, that was my vision. I got to do licensed G.I. Joe fiction. So I hemmed and hawed, and I said, I'm not sure I want to put that out in any other form other than the original vision that existed. Eventually I got to a point where I said, it's not doing anybody any good sitting on a file on my computer. So I can't publish G.I. Joe First Salvo. What I did publish was DC Colt First Salvo, which is the story. It's hard rock. It's not rock and roll. So instead of short fuse, I have quick wick. There's a female on the team who hangs out with Black Mamba and carries a crossbow, and her name's Red. So it's the same story. I think it's still engaging. I think it's still gripping. I had somebody generously say this weekend that when you're reading it, once you know who the characters are, you stop seeing the wrong names and you just read the right names. So if you're interested in picking that up, it is available on Amazon. And thus far, I not only have that, but the second one I have Honor. Okay, so those are available on Amazon right now in hardcover. When I first published the book, they were digital. And like I said, there's content there. So Amazon contacted me. I had print and I waited for the editorial process, and they came back and they said, everything looks great. We just want you to know that your page limit, you could actually break the book up into 3 books because it's so long, there's so much there. So if you want to charge 3 times as much, you can break it up into 3 different books. And I thought, well, that's not fair to people. I don't want people reading a third of a book and then saying, why did I pay for this? But you get a lot of content. It's a nice thick book, and it delves into a lot of those characters, some of whom you don't really get a chance to spend time with in some of the other media. So my plan is to eventually get around to do the others, the other 2 novels, and then I'm going to put the novellas in one collection. So yeah, if you're a big G.I. Joe fan and you're starving for some really great stories, especially about some of those earlier characters, jump on Amazon, take a look at them, buy the first one, and I think if I can get you to buy the first one, I'm pretty confident that you buy the second, because I think you're going to fall in love with what I've done. At least I hope so. Okay. Ed's got some great stuff to say, and I'm going to turn it over to them in a minute. I know many of us here are toy fans, and we're probably dying to see what he has to say, and it's really great stuff. But does anybody have any questions about kind of writing or my career or anything that I can answer for you? Yes, sir?
So, you have a very unique perspective because you cut your teeth on licensed material. What are some of the benefits that come with working with a licensed product as opposed to one of your own creation?
There's a trade-off on both sides of that equation, right? With your own creation, the sky's the limit. You establish all of the characters, you establish all the rules for the universe, because you want it always to be consistent, right? So there are no handcuffs on where you want to go and what you want to do, which can be great. It can also be difficult. Sometimes with those constraints, I found that it enables me to be more creative. One of the fun things about writing for G.I. Joe was I wanted to ground it a little bit. My take on G.I. Joe is very, very dissimilar to, say, the cartoons with lasers and Cobra La and all those things. But I want to incorporate some of the aspects of that I love, but how do I bring that into a world that's kind of more realistic and grounded? So that gave me some challenges that I had a lot of fun kind of overcoming. If you're working with somebody else's IP, the disadvantage is theirs, right? And you have to respect kind of, sometimes there's creative differences. You start to write about a character, you fall in love with that character, and then somebody comes back and says, like, well, actually, I don't see it this way. I have to be invested as the writer, and then if that's taken, there's kind of a tension there. So there's a trade-off for both of those that I found interesting. Yep.
On your first works, how do you go about getting published?
For the Amazon or the Kindle Amazon stuff?
Yes.
So that process was much easier in terms of submission than I expected. I had expected kind of an editorial process where they would go through and kind of come back and say, we can do this, we can't do this, we want to change that. The way that they had arranged that, it was very kind of open. People submitted, and there was 5 or 6 kind of guidelines that they made sure that you were following, and then they put it out there. I'm not talking out of turn here. I don't think this is going to get back to anybody who shouldn't hear this. I almost kind of wish there was a kind of a more stringent process when they did that. There was some really great stuff that was published through there. There was some stuff that probably wasn't up to professional levels, and I think that may have been kind of harmful to the brand a little bit, because if the first one you grabbed was kind of, then you're less inclined to kind of go and check out some of the better stuff. A lot of the other stuff I've done since then has been self-publishing. Amazon makes it real easy now to kind of put something out, and again, the disadvantage there is marketing. You don't have a marketing team, an established press kind of going out to bookstores and getting your stuff in front of people. But because I've been working with IPs that have an established fan base, I've been able to find my audience. It's been very gratifying. Okay. Yes, sir?
You talked about taking more of a grounded approach with G.I. Joe. Did you do any research into military tactics, or could you explain about that a bit?
I did. I tried to do a lot of that so that I sounded like I knew what the heck I was talking about. I was very gratified. I work in the English department for a college in Illinois, and my chairperson, who I'd known for years, read the book, and he came up to me afterwards and said, I finished reading your book, I really enjoyed it. He said, did you serve in the military? And that told me, like, I fooled him. It sounded competent enough that it sounded like I knew what I was talking about. So yeah, I spent a lot of time researching techniques and regulations and stuff like that, so that I could incorporate a lot of that in there, so that I sounded knowledgeable. All right, we're ready to turn it over to Ed Helm. Oh, one last
Any follow-up for the Action Force, the sequel to the Broken Alliances?
There's nothing planned at this time. There's nothing planned. I've mentioned it to Bobby. We talked about a couple other things. The last thing I did for him, and I don't even know if he used it yet, but he's got some character ideas coming, and he's got kind of a radio promo type thing that I wrote for him. So we're still in contact, and still have a good working relationship. Last time I suggested a novel to him, he said that he was open to the idea, but he needed to work on some things. So maybe in the future, yeah, I'd love to come back to that world. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Ed for a little bit. Thank you, everybody, for, again, coming and for your attention, and I'll be around afterwards to answer any questions.
I've lost my voice a little bit, so I sound a little creepy today. But I'm Ed Hellman. I run Devil's Bargain Toys, which is just me, so I run myself. And I do freelance design, like concept work, also for fresh fiction. So a lot of the Eagle Force characters that are coming out in this wave and some of them in the previous waves are ones that I had mocked up for Bill or created, or he gave me a rough idea of what he was looking at, and I'd play around with his parts library, which is really fun as someone with a customizing background. And I ran the booth for Fresh Monkey for several years, when JoeFest first started, and Bill wasn't able to come out. So that was really gratifying, kind of being on that side of the world of toy making, as someone who was really interested in toy making growing up, but did not, at first pursue it in any sort of career pathway. It was just a blast, kind of seeing how Bill was running things and hearing fans' reactions to what he was putting out, and then being able to give a little input. And Bill is a big champion of indie creators, so he's been gracious enough to support me and in releasing a bunch of figures on my own using his parts library. And his tooling and resources, and it's been fantastic. So I'm very indebted to Bill Murphy and Fresh Monkey Fiction, and now Big Bad Workshop, which is a terrific opportunity. Before I move on, I'm just going to say, wait, if you have not signed up for our mailing list, you can use this QR code. I'll leave it up for a second. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. We will not spam you, but when we put out figures, in the past, it's been exclusives just for the show because of tariffs, because of me procrastinating. The current wave of upcoming figures is coming out in a few months. It's only going to be a very, very limited number of figures because it was planned as an exclusive. It was not planned as like a full run of figures. I don't think I have room in my small New York apartment for all those figures. So if you're interested, I would say sign up for the mailing list because it's just going to be announced online. It's going to be in stock. It's not a pre-order, and they go very quickly. And in the past, I've had people, reach out to me about, are you going to make this character again? And while in some cases we are, for the most part, these are just like one-time things. If I get the opportunity to do another figure from Bill, I'm much more inclined to do something new and play around and go back and redo something. So scan and sign up if you can. So to set the stage, my background is the entryway into toy collecting was G.I. Joe, like most of you, or many of you, and also as a customizer. And there was one concept that, for whatever reason, was so absurd and so ridiculous that it really gripped me, and I ended up making dozens and dozens of customs of this character, and that is Bullet Man. And so, of course, this is the public domain Fawcett Comics Bullet Man. I love the design. I just thought it's so stupid, but it's so fun. A guy in a bullet helmet, and here he is, fighting his nemesis, Black Rat, a guy in a black rat costume with a cape, and of course he's punching a robot, and he's fighting these canine criminals that have stolen some money. So there was a lot of stories that were totally absurd, but somehow they made it work, and it was just really fun and kind of like really inspired a lot of play, when I was thinking about characters. And Bill is also a big fan of public domain characters, so he has done homages and pulled in a lot of characters into his line. And so at some point he said, if we were to do Bullet Man, what would you do? Can you mock up a design? Well, how would you do it? And then when he saw it, he was like, why don't you just release it? I'll help you release it, and you can do it yourself. And I was like, heck yeah, of course. And he's like, do it as a JoeFest exclusive. You're going to be there anyway. So we did that. Also, I had worked on the Asp and the Warhead, which used some of the same tooling, and so I was very familiar with it. And so here he is. Here is the Bullet Man, an awesome image from Eddie American, who is at Billy Kessler on Instagram. He's insanely talented, and he's fighting Black Terror for whatever reason from Bill's line. And Eddie has done so many advertising photos for, I think, all the lines almost, it seems like. It seems like everyone goes through him. It's like a rite of passage, that Eddie does a photo of your stuff, and he's amazing. He's the first Ed and the second Ed. So to continue the theme of storytelling that Bill has started here, I think today, as I kind of go through this, I'm going to talk about a little bit some of the backstory that I had envisioned about these characters to sort of help flesh it out. This character was named Jody Aquino Barr, named after Joseph Aquino, who had done a bunch of customs of Bullet Man and really inspired that in me. And the idea behind him was that he is kind of like a shady CIA agent who has been caught breaking the law, and the government said, to escape jail time, you're going to be the Bullet Man for us. And that's how he got out of going to jail and sort of seeked redemption. And also, if not everyone noticed, but there is a little note in one of his file cards that says that he's suffering from macular degeneration, which was meant to be that eventually he's going to go blind. And I liked the idea of this blind sort of samurai or blind sharpshooter who somehow shoots and has a jetpack, and it kind of added to the silliness of it. I was like, what's going to happen once he loses his eyesight? He's just going to be flying into things. But that makes sense if he's fighting a guy in a giant man costume. So he came with all these parts, and came with a masked helmet also, because I thought he's probably going to have bugs flying into his mouth if he's flying around. But also, Bill said, well, doesn't he be like a bullet drone or something? If you put the helmet on, that could be like his backup or something. Or maybe he goes out for coffee and the bullet drone fills in for him or something. So we did that, and that sold pretty well, and people seemed excited about it. And so I thought, Bill said, what are you going to do next year? I was like, oh, I can do this next year. Okay. So I was thinking, well, maybe there's a villain that he could fight other than a guy in a rat costume or a bunch of, like a gang of dogs. Not that there's anything wrong with a guy, in a giant rat costume. I don't know why I looked at you. But, so this character that I came up with was Black Jet and the Sky Pirates. This is artwork by Damien Navarro. You can look him up on Instagram. His work is amazing. He's this young artist that I've been really lucky to sort of team up with multiple times. And I love this image. I think in this version you can't see, but he actually drew my hairless cat in the corner in one of these images. And I think this is the version that took it out because it was on the packaging. So this is Black Jet and the Sky Pirates. The idea behind him was he's sort of like a French leader of a group of bandits that are fueled by the desire to steal from all those who cross their airways. And whatever they steal, they just destroy. So they're not in it for the profit. They don't want what they take. They just don't want you to have it. They kind of want to level the playing field. And here's another Eddie photo. It's Black Jet fighting the bullet drones. And maybe one of those is Bullet Man. And here's a picture by another great artist, Sebastian Piris, and another Eddie picture. Just trying to sort of, I think early on I was really intent on, as I was kind of doing the designs, seeing where the character kind of came out of those designs, and then as I was asking different artists to do versions of the character, it also really sort of helped inspire, you know, what would come next and sort of fleshing out that story. So this is what he came with. He came with a bunch of accessories, and you know, I asked Bill, like, how many accessories can I do? And he was like, well, you know, it'll affect the bottom line some, but like, you could do a lot of accessories. And because I was interested in storytelling, I was like, okay, so as a collector, I don't want just one figure. I want to be able to do like a team of figures, to the detriment of my wallet. And so this included Black Jet in his helmeted head, as well as Black Jet in his scarred, unmasked head, and then his 3 Sky Pirates. I think it's Corbeau, which is the Raven, La Cloche, which is Belle in French, and then Le Vol, who is theft or flight, something like that. And so the idea was that, you know, you could interchange the parts and create these characters. Another Damien picture of them all teaming up. And I kind of pictured these Sky Pirates as being very disposable, very interchangeable, and they're, you know, at any given day, maybe one of them has skimmed off the top and Black Jet has killed him, or, you know, he got, you know, bullied flew into him or something like that. And this is a, you know, sort of those figures coming to life through Eddie's work. And then I found out very recently that Big Bad Toy Store wants to re-release these figures. So one thing we announced this weekend, yesterday at the panel for Big Bad Workshop, they're going to be releasing the figures in new carded packaging. They're going to have it on their store, so there's going to be a lot available, you know, for whoever wants it. They're coming really soon. You know, we're working on it now, so you know, I would say it's probably months, you know, away, not very far. We're going to start work on the packaging now. The packaging is going to be the same packaging as the Monster Force packaging, so it'll open up, you know, with like, you know, the little flap. We're going to have a comic on the inside with hopefully Damien's artwork, and maybe I'll convince Bill to work on that. We'll see. I'm just throwing that at him now.
I just got a job.
We'll see. I don't know how much it pays. But we'll definitely plug, you know, stuff for Bill, for everyone involved in all this, on this packaging, because I'm just so grateful for everyone's support and excitement about these characters. And these figures also will have some updates to them. We're going to have different Sky Pirate heads instead. They'll have different paint apps, so that if you already have those Sky Pirates, now you have 2 more. It's just something a little different. I'm going to play with some of the colors a little bit and some of the logos so that they're a little crisper, maybe try to get the silver a little more silvery. And also, Bullet Man might come with an unmasked head also. So we're going to play around with that.
Yes.
And that brings us to this year's characters, which are the Shields of Liberty. Really excited about them. And I'm going to talk quickly about those characters. It's a 6-person team, and I'm going to walk through who they are, how you can get them, and how they're going to be packaged. So here they are. This is another Damien artwork, and you can see the figures are lined up here. There's actually 6 characters, and they're going to come with a bunch of accessories, and there's also going to be a few villains that we can touch on too. So they're led by Uncle Sam Jr. This is Uncle Sam. He's kind of a younger looking Uncle Sam than you're used to. I was picturing kind of like he looks like he's kind of in his 30s with prematurely white hair. Uncle Sam always has white hair. People don't know this. He comes with a robot eagle, of course, perhaps to take on the gang of canines. And the idea is, I kind of thought like Groot, you know, where he sort of regenerates and regrows after a certain time, so he kind of starts over, and that's why they call him Uncle Sam Jr. Same guy, but he just looks really young. I also liked James Bond Jr. as a kid. And I think just because we're lucky enough to have Bill here, not to take up too much time, but I was thinking, I've talked to you a lot about these characters. Maybe you can say like a sentence or 2 about each one.
He's a really fascinating character because he kind of embodies the American ideal. Right? And I think that's really interesting, especially now in our country. So, like, thinking about what values he has and what he represents and kind of how he portrays himself and how he carries himself has been a lot of fun for a number of reasons.
And also, of course, he's playing on another homage to, back in these old public domain stories, Uncle Sam was everywhere. You know, they were kind of based on this old patriotic concept, and so it felt really weird not to include him in this story in some capacity. I didn't set out on doing anything political, but I just felt like I wanted to challenge myself into how I could incorporate it. The next character is Glory. All these characters are civilians that have been rallied together by Sam. So Glory is a sharpshooter with a crossbow. He's also a Brooklyn College history professor. I may have gotten the professor idea looking at Bill. But the idea is that he's like the level head. He's great at calming everyone down if there's a lot of chaos going on.
Yeah, he's definitely the one that I've been relating to the most, just from a professional standpoint. But they've really kind of thought a lot about his motivations and his background and how he kind of emerged as a key member of this team. So I credit him for kind of doing that kind of backstory idea of where he came from and why he is where he is at the moment.
Thanks. And this is Party Line. Party Line is non-binary, is the commander of the team, and probably the most deadly of all of them. Also the youngest, and I was trying to think of what they do on their off time, and they're a studio artist in LA, and I was kind of thinking of them almost like the Winter Soldier without the powers. They're the one that you send across enemy lines to take out the guard tower, slit people's throats, and then come back.
Ed has said that they are his favorite character, so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about how to live up to that potential. Right?
No pressure.
Sure.
This is Sentinel. Sentinel is a member of the Tlingit tribe of Native Americans in the Panhandle of Alaska. Is also probably the most jovial, but also quickest to put his foot in his mouth. And is a video game streamer and also a heavy weapons specialist. I feel like those go together. I don't know why. I feel like some people probably are video game streamers and heavy weapons specialists.
Any character that I come across, I try to think to myself, like, what do I have in common? How can I relate to this character? He talked about the first to put his foot in his mouth. That's definitely me. So that character is one that I can easily kind of relate to. Thank you.
This is Hanging Chad. I feel like every team needs a guy who doesn't want to take his mask off. All these are political names. You probably figured that out by now. I figure, he's from Arizona. I'll say that. I think maybe leave a little more mystery about him.
One of the things that you told me about him is that he is the first to talk his way into trouble, but also talk his way out of trouble.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me from a character who's kind of closed off and doesn't want to reveal himself. So there's an interesting dichotomy there that interests me.
Some of these ideas also, I talked to Joseph endlessly and talked to him about ideas, and he kind of pitched some of these concepts and came up with some of the beginnings of these ideas and sort of fleshed them out for me. So I owe a lot to Joseph. And then we got Sidearm. So this is Bullet Man. This is the same Bullet Man, but he has joined the team. Now he's not a loner. He's working with them. This is his outfit. You notice he doesn't have a jetpack. We're working on having a hole in the back of that vest, and theoretically you could plug in the jetpack in there. He doesn't come with one because I think at this point he's able to fly kind of like other iterations of Bullet Man without the jetpack, which will be explained later. I'm not going to say that yet, but.
It always interested me with collecting figures to see an evolution of a character, right? It implies some sort of growth or some sort of change. So, when Snake Eyes 2 came out, you saw that at the back of the package, you thought, oh, what's the story here? What's going on? So the first time I saw this image, my mind worked the same way. Like, why do I need another figure? What's changed? And so it'll be interesting to see how that happens.
And then, of course, we need some villains. And we're going to try to rock through this a little bit quicker just because I'm respectful of time for Larry. But we've got Dr. Ursa. We've got Soft Goods Cloak done by Urban Rev, Rogelio. And so this is he owns a series of private prisons and has convinced the government to roll out his robot soldiers to sort of be the counter to the superheroes. You know, you can't always, they're very skeptical of this Uncle Sam. So he's a complex character.
Well, and you're introducing, it seems now, kind of not just good versus evil or one team against another, but we've got different kind of elements, right? With the Black Jet, and then Dr. Ursa, and then the Shields of Liberty. So
Yep.
it's you're adding dimensions to this world that you're creating.
And then Yankee Doodle Jones is his field commander. Has been Frankenstein together by the dead bodies of other soldiers. This is sort of his version of how to counter Uncle Sam. Also is an homage to an old ridiculous character, which actually was pitched to me by someone at JoeFest many years ago, and I don't know who, but was like, you should do Yankee Doodle Jones. And I was like, I don't know who that is. But he was also a character stitched together from Dead Soldiers, which is a horrible idea. But you know, I thought maybe he's a villain at this point. And we've got Agent Marlowe. Oh, sorry. Maybe I'll skip. I'll just move on. So Agent Marlowe is Ursa's bodyguard. He's kind of probably someone none of us would ever want guarding them. He's someone that was moved around from unit to unit as a sniper because he creeped everyone out. But he's going to come with Dr. Ursa. And then we've got the Gold Star agents. You might recognize that we're reusing ahead, but I feel like we made it work. I'm really, really excited about this design. It's kind of like this weird cyber cop thing, but these are these government watchdogs that are being sent out.
Every line needs a good troop builder.
Yes. So how are these going to be sold and packaged? So this is Uncle Sam's packaging. You'll notice that all the bodies are the same. So I have one hero body, one villain body, and a bunch of accessories, and it's going to be sold basically where it's like Uncle Sam, you'll have all the parts for him, and then you also have all the parts but no body for Hanging Chad. You can switch it out and make Hanging Chad if you want. You just have to buy another version of it if you want a second body. And then you've got Glory and Sentinel come together also. So you get Glory with one body and then parts to make either character. Sidearm and Party Line. And this art is so good. I like this art. You've got Yankee Doodle and the Gold Star agents. And then you also have Dr. Ursa and Agent Marlowe. And you'll notice that Dr. Ursa's face is pixelated, and I'm not going to say why, but he might come with another head sculpt that has never been used before by Eagle Force. That is really fun, and I've been trying to get built to use for many years. Anything you want to add to that?
Not this slide.
All right, cool. So before we move on, last chance. If you haven't signed up for this, I would do that. It's going to be a really limited run, and we're really excited to get this out in a few months to you. But wait, you're probably wondering, or you probably figured out, why are we doing this panel together? And I'll let Bill talk about that.
They've started to create a really wonderful universe, wouldn't you agree, based on everything you've seen today? Does anybody want to see more of it?
Yeah.
So if I were to tell you that I spent the last several weeks, hour after hour, working on a novel that we're going to try to publish, coinciding with some of these figures, that would, okay, then I'll tell you that. I spent the last several weeks working full-time, essentially, taking these incredible characters and these incredible stories that Ed has started to play with and provide as much backstory as I can. The hope is to have the rough draft done before my birthday in September. We'll put up another little barcode thing so you can send money on September 2nd if you want to. We're going to try to get that out to coincide with the figures as closely as possible so that we can kind of flesh out this universe and tell some really exciting stories about some of the the great stuff that it's been doing.
So I know we have to stop in like a second, but I'd love if you don't mind just kind of teasing the story a little bit.
There's so much.
Yeah.
One of the things we started with was why the transition from the Bullet Man to Cider. I think that's an important kind of character beat. They alluded to Jody's macular degeneration and his quest for redemption. So we're going to kind of see how that plays out as he kind of tries to clear his name and kind of feel as if he is a hero before he loses his ability to see. So that's an important thing. One of the interesting things about the universe, like I said earlier, is that it's not just these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, right? There's different pulling forces that represent kind of different things in Jody's life and kind of for the fate of the universe. So it's been fun to kind of play with that and see how all of those things interact and kind of push and pull on him and the fate of the world.
And you've incorporated, the Gold Stars, Dr. Ursula, Yankee Doodle, you've incorporated Marlowe, you've incorporated the Shields of Liberty, Black Jet is a huge character in it. A lot of his Sky Pirates play interesting roles, and a lot of original characters that you've created that, we might try to incorporate in some way into the line if you can.
I'm just now starting to read and get to know the Shields of Liberty, so it's been a lot of fun to kind of like make them fully realized characters and see how they're going to react to the plot points that I know are coming up. So the next few weeks are going to be me kind of intimately getting to know them more and kind of figuring out who does what in the story and what best serves the story.
So, I want to wrap this up, but I do want to thank you. I think Bill approached me last year about doing this, like a collaboration, and I think I was very wary, even though I loved your work, just because it was kind of like my baby. And I can safely say after reading the early drafts of the book, the first few chapters, I was like, you totally honored my concepts and elevated them so much. So it's such a pleasure for me to read and see these characters come to life and so inspiring. And I really hope you guys enjoy it. I think it's going to be really good.
Well, thank you for trusting me with something that, again, you've obviously put a lot of work into, so I'm going to try to live up to that. Barb?